Thunderbirds are go!
First broadcast in 1965, Thunderbirds is probably the greatest and best remembered show from the late Gerry Anderson. Building off the success of his previous pioneering puppet programs such as Perils of Penelope and Stingray, Thunderbirds follows international rescue and the Tracy family as they pilot their magnificent Thunderbird machines, providing aid to those who would otherwise perish, with help from London agent Lady Penelope and Parker, and hindered by the villainous Hood. The show set new standards in special effects, with many people involved going on to work on films like 2001: A Space Odyssey and the James Bond and Star Wars series, and matured the formulas set out by older Anderson shows to create stories that would appeal to adults as well as children. Thunderbirds has spawned 3 feature films and a semi-CGI reboot, one of only 2 Anderson shows to be so treated. High-profile repeat runs in the 90s and noughties led to renewed interest amongst those generation's children, myself included, all of which has helped the original series remain popular and culturally relevant in a way very few shows of the era have managed.
Thank you, Parker.
It is a true television classic.
Thunderbirds are go! FAB!
But, like all classics, it's not perfect. Unsurprisingly for a 60-year-old show, some of the politics regarding race and gender seem dated to modern eyes. While a lot of the effect work still holds up brilliantly, the super marionettes portraying the characters are sometimes pushed beyond their practical limits. The bright and bold vision of the future is only going to seem more and more retro as each year goes by. And above all else, the show's continuity is a bit of a nightmare. This isn't entirely the show's fault. Originally it was meant to run for half an hour, much as Supercar, Perils of Penelope and Stingray had done beforehand, and as Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons would do afterwards. However, upon viewing the first episode, Trapped in the Sky, ITC head Lou Grade ordered the entire series to be filmed at an hour's length. With several shows already completed or nearing completion in their half-hour form, additional material had to be filmed to be inserted into these episodes, while new scripts were rewritten or extended to bring them up to the hour's runtime. For more information on this, check out Century 21's video series Thunderbirds Unseen, which explores how the early episodes were extended using original paperwork, original scripts, and in some cases early prints of the episodes. With shooting now taking place on multiple episodes at once, including inserting sequences into the shorter episodes to bring them up to length, this delayed delivery of the early episodes until later in the run, which led to the first UK region to air the show, ATV Midlands, to proceed with the order received, airing completed shows as they arrived. Thunderbirds is mostly an Adventure of the Week show, so it shouldn't really matter what order you show the episodes in, just so long as you show the first episode first. However, the show has just enough continuity that by delaying the early episodes to later in the run, details begin to contradict one another. When the show was repeated later on, the production order was used. This was the order I first saw the show in during the noughties repeat run. However, due to the fact that the early episodes were being worked on alongside episodes later in the run, details from the later episodes crept into the new sequences to be inserted, resulting in most of the continuity errors being retained and, in some cases, creating new ones while solving others. Most fans, once they notice this, tend to just chalk this up as an artifact of the show's sometimes chaotic production history and just leave it at that. Not me though. As a serious academic exercise and an excuse to watch one of my favourite shows again, I decided to try and work out once and for all the correct order of events. I'll say here, these issues only affect season 1, so that's all we're covering. I did watch the second series, you know, just to be sure, but it's hardly long enough to generate any errors. We're also not doing the anniversary films, either of the puppet feature films, we're definitely not doing that feature film, and we're not discussing Thunderbirds Are Go. We're living in the world of the original sets, the original puppets, and in Virgil's case, the original voice.
Okay, Gordon, she's surfaced.
FAB, Thunderbird 4. Good luck.
Oh, for a world where David Holliday didn't go back to America. But before I go into my results, it's best that we're all aware of what errors actually exist in the programme. And because I've always wanted to do this, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thundernerds are go! Grandma Tracy appears or is mentioned in several episodes prior to her introduction in Moving or Dead, which was episode 9 of the production order and episode 20 of 26 in the broadcast order. The events of the episode Sunprobe are stated to happen a week after the titular ship launches in the Perils of Penelope, yet the production order places Sunprobe first. The broadcast order correctly puts Sunprobe after the Perils of Penelope, puts a whopping 7 adventures between them. International Rescue must have had a very busy week. Whilst we're on the episode, Sunprobe is stated to be Tintin's first rescue mission, yet in the preceding episode in the broadcast order, The Uninvited, she accompanies Virgil and Brains out to the Sahara to rescue Scott after he's shot down. In the production order, these episodes are switched round, which solves the issue. In Edge of Impact, Jeff Tracy speculates that a Byzantine plane may contain some more of Tintin's admirers, a reference to Old Flame Eddie Hausman visiting the island in End of the Road, yet Edge of Impact was broadcast first. Production order switches these episodes around and solves that one as well. Scott Tracy states that he's been on every single rescue in Danger Ocean Deep, yet he sits out the Perils of Penelope, which is always broadcast before that one. Given the context of the conversation, he is probably just rounding up, but we're playing hard mode. No one lies, misremembers or exaggerates. And I think that's it. So that's the continuity errors, but if I just wanted to fix those, I could just move around 4 or 5 episodes in either order and that would do the job fine. In addition to this, I wanted whatever order I came up with to sort of flow nicely as a season of television, as well as spacing out some reoccurring events over the course of the series. This includes Alan being posted to Thunderbird 5 instead of John, and also making sure that the Hood's appearances build up in a satisfying manner. I also wanted to just build in 1 or 2 little bits of continuity, which ended up affecting the order somewhat, but we'll discuss all of that when we get to it. We're also ignoring all dates shown on screen throughout the series. According to almost all the newspapers we see, the bulk of the series happens on Friday the 24th of December, though they can't seem to decide whether it's Christmas Eve 2007, which was a Monday, or 1964, which was a Thursday. I feel it's wise to cast these aside. So, with all of this said, let's begin. Trapped in the Sky. This is obviously the easiest placement. Trapped in the Sky is stated multiple times in the episode to be the first rescue.
We have our first emergency call, Father.
It's our first assignment, so make it good.
So it has to be placed here. Trapped in the Sky also marks the first of the Hood's appearances, so it gives us a few episodes to play with before we ought to be seeing him again. There's nothing else really to say about the placement of this episode, so I'll just say that the Fire Flash has to be one of the coolest fictional airplanes devised, and the landing attempt is a truly iconic sequence. I wonder if I should just abbreviate the title so I don't have to keep saying them. That would make Trapped in the Sky nope, we are not doing that. Pit of Peril can, in theory, take place at any point in the series run, as it avoids all characters and situations at the heart of the continuity errors. However, it just feels wrong to place it anywhere else other than episode 2, seeing as it occupies this space in both production and broadcast orders. It fits just as well in slot 2 as the mold doesn't through this pod door. The story does somewhat support this placement. The extra material added mainly takes the form of General Peters attempting to recover the Sidewinder with only the men at his disposal, and it takes some time before anyone thinks to call international rescue.
We'd stand a remote chance of effecting a rescue, but...
He said rescue, General.
Almost as if the organisation hasn't been established very long. It's also a good chance to see the mole in action, so you're not left wondering for ages what that weird drill thing is in the credits. Here we begin having to alter both episode orders quite significantly. Thunderbirds has a number of episodes which play with the structure and the format of the series, and in most cases I am trying to hold them back till later in the run once the show's sort of common tropes have been established. 30 Minutes Afternoon is kind of a diversion into the spy genre, which is a genre the show will step back into again. However, it's the last episode without Grandma Tracy that I feel its placement wouldn't be hindered by placing it earlier in the series. The early episodes of the show in the production order tend to feature the collapse or endangerment of large ships and projects as the catalyst for their plots. The Fire Flash, the Sidewinder, the Thompson Tower, the Sunprobe, the Sahara Atomic Reactor. They stay a constant through the series, and provide some of the best episodes, but placing 30 Minutes Afternoon here helps break up that run a little, keeping some gems for later in the run. The spy flavour creeps in slowly through the story, only really kicking in once the police find Prescott's bracelet in the remains of the tower. Incidentally, we know how far Prescott had to drive.
And he got 30 miles to go.
So to do that in the 10 minutes shown, he would have had to be driving at 180 miles an hour. No wonder the police were so concerned. Whilst this story structure does mean that international rescue are missing from the middle of the episode, you do get the chance to see an ordinary rescue early on. It's not land the aircraft or save this spaceship from the sun. It's get this man out of a burning elevator. It's a good thing he's a puppet. You also get your fix of the Thunderbird machines early in the plot to tide you over until they reappear at the end. Wait, why is Brains on Thunderbird 5? There's no reason given in the script. Is John just Loneby? Being a spy-flavoured episode, it's also a good chance to see Penelope and Parker in action early on. She's absent until the mighty Atom in the production order. Once Southern joins the plot, he takes centre stage until he receives a big cuddle from this robot, leaving the bad guys to get away. While International Rescue can only deal with the rescue of Southern...
I'll take Pod 5, the laser beam equipment.
Really, Virgil? Lady Penelope is the obvious choice to tie up the story's loose end. Her involvement is structured in a similar way to Trapped in the Sky, receiving a call via Teapot, tracking the villains in Fab 1, and shooting the baddie's vehicle to bits. It just feels right for this to come early in the run before her and Parker start getting fleshed out. Right, this one is probably the story where its position is most forced by continuity into a certain place, for good or for ill. Danger at Ocean Deep is brought this far forward by Scott and John's conversation at the end with Jeff.
How many rescues have you been out to?
All of them, Father.
I'll address right now, in my heart of hearts, I believe Scott is rounding up here. In Season 1 he only sits out one rescue, the Perils of Penelope, which is coming up fairly soon in this order.
Sorry not to have a big reception party to meet you after your leave. We've got a major rescue operation in hand.
Okay, Father, I understand. I hope I'll be able to help too.
However, I made the rules and I have to stick by them. The conversation does seem a little incongruous here, with John claiming to have been on dozens of rescues by episode 4.
I guess about a dozen, Father.
This is mainly a problem if you just binge watch the series, as you might do on DVD or on streaming, or as I did for this project. If this was being broadcast week on week, you would have had a month between Trapped in the Sky and Danger at Ocean Deep. International Rescue could have been on several less interesting missions between episodes. Throughout the series we do hear glimpses and conversations referring to rescues that we don't see. In fact, there is one in this very episode. Danger at Ocean Deep feels like a later series episode in a way that 30 Minutes Afternoon doesn't. I wonder how well this joke with Parker works, coming before Vault of Death, which fully develops Penelope and Parker's relationship. And whilst the plot of Save Ocean Pioneer 2 fits well into the early mould of the series, the core complication of communications issues feels like something you'd find later on as the series begins to challenge its own status quo. On this point, this line,
I think it only affects transmissions via the satellite.
Yes, but it cleared itself then, didn't it?
confuses me slightly. Is there a missing scene? There's no static with John in the first call. Talking of John, his only rescue. It feels a shame to place it way at the front, but it's gotta go somewhere. Jerry Anderson really hated this puppet for some reason. As I have nowhere else to mention it, I will say that I appreciate the fact that the lasers in this episode make the same noise that they do in 30 Minutes Afternoon. Danger Ocean Deep also marks the first mention of Alan and John swapping shifts on the space station.
You're due to relieve John in 6 hours anyway. Can you take off now?
I guess so, Father.
Which I'm trying to keep as evenly spaced as I can in this order. It also marks the debut of Thunderbird 3 in its launch sequence. In the production order, this would be Sun Probe. In the broadcast order, this would be the Uninvited at episode 10, which feels weirdly late to me. It's also the only episode with Thunderbird 3 which doesn't feature or mention Grandma, bar one which I'm saving for later in the run. It's important to have at least one appearance of the launch sequence without Grandma for the next episode coming up. This episode is the cause of most of the continuity errors in the series. It's my theory that most of the stuff featuring Grandma before this in production order was stuff added to extend the episodes out from half an hour to an hour, borne out by her minimal appearances in episodes like Operation Crash Dive and The Mighty Atom. For another example, she's only mentioned in reference to the Thunderbird 2 subplot of Sun Probe.
Get Grandma to organize some auxiliary clothing.
Okay, Father.
Which I'm certain is additional material. It's at this point we've used up all the episodes without Grandma that we can easily place at the beginning of the run. All the other episodes she sits out are being saved for later in the run. for either plot purposes or just for overall season flow. This becomes the series' first major out-of-genre episode. 30 Minutes After Noon feels like an unusual episode of Thunderbirds, whereas Movin' Your Dead feels like it could have been written for another show entirely. The story is told mostly in flashback, featuring a motor race with enough carnage that it may as well be a pod race. The Thunderbird machines are absent until nearly the very end, the story being driven by Gomez and Gillespie and their attempt to steal Alan's car. Oh look, autotune. The episode is also good enough to tell us how long Alan has been out of racing.
1 year ago, America's most promising racing driver, Alan Tracy, announced he was retiring from the racing world.
And with that information, it feels right to keep it near the beginning of the series. This becomes the first of several feature episodes for Alan, and it's a strong start. The main plot device of the movement-based bomb is simple, striking, and effective. The ending gag also dictates the placement of Danger at Ocean Deep. You need to have seen the Thunderbird 3 launch sequence at least once for the joke to land. And as discussed, Danger at Ocean Deep is the only episode we have that fits the bill. It's a good idea to have either Vault of Death or the Perils of Penelope early in a viewing order, as these two episodes do a lot to establish Lady Penelope and Parker as being able to lead episodes of the show. The production order uses the former, and the broadcast order uses the latter. This is the more straight-laced and serious of the two, but it does have its moments.
I say, open this door at once. We're British.
I don't think that works on the French. In theory, this episode could happen much later in the series. However, it is tied to an episode that I do kind of want to happen relatively early on. No prizes for guessing which. This episode marks the first rescue featuring Gordon. This does lead to an odd occurrence where Jeff states
Gordon needed a change from underwater rescues anyway.
despite having none on screen so far. That said, we have seen Gordon's been out on off-screen rescues, and the broadcast order does the same, so I can live with this one. The episode also establishes Gordon as a strong marksman, a skill that will come up again. Despite Sunprobe and the Perils of Penelope both being linked by the launch of the Sunprobe itself, no broadcaster has ever aired them back to back, and watching here I can kinda tell why. In fact, when I first saw the episodes in production order, so Perils following Sunprobe, I ended up thinking for quite a bit that the BBC had put the wrong episode on. I did toy with putting Movin' Your Dead between them, as Grandma has no presence in the Perils of Penelope, but the Sunprobe was launched
Last week.
in Perils of Penelope, and the launch footage is described as being from
A week ago.
in Sunprobe. Movin' Your Dead happens over at least 3 days, and the main plot of the Perils of Penelope happens over at least 2. Unless you accept they have had literally no days off, there's not really enough time for all of this to happen, so back to back go these two. I also feel it's important to have a Thunderbird 3 rescue early on. It only takes part in 3 rescue operations throughout the course of the series, 2 of which are in the first season. This is why the Perils of Penelope has leapfrogged Vault of Death here. This also gives Tintin a major role early in the series, while correctly keeping this as her first actual rescue.
Your first mission, Tintin. Make it a successful one.
I'll do my best, Mr. Tracy.
There's not much more to say about this story in relation to where it should happen, so I'll just state that it's a highlight of the series. The reworking of the plot to include Thunderbird 3's failure gives the story a real weight, and the footage of Thunderbird 2 at Mount Arkin looks absolutely amazing. If you've never seen the series before, and by the way, spoilers, this one is an ideal one to check out. And just as we need a Thunderbird 3 rescue early on, we need a glimpse of Thunderbird 4. Thunderbird 4's role in the Mighty Atom is minimal, but its brief appearance here is made up for in the latter half of the series. Trust me, you're going to be seeing a lot more of that yellow submarine. This is also about as early as you can feature the craft. Barring the clip show, all of Thunderbird 4's appearances in Season 1 also feature a Grandma appearance. This episode also features the return of the Hood. The Hood only makes 6 appearances in the show, all in Season 1, excluding his role in the first movie and his possible role in the second. Let's not get into it, big can of worms. As much as possible, I wanted each appearance to raise the stakes and build dramatically. Whilst the Mighty Atom is the episode where the Hood blows up 2 nuclear power plants, he blows up the first one by accident, and it's also the story where he plays with a robot mouse in order to get photographs of the Thunderbirds in his least effective plan. I detect the hand of Dennis Spooner here. I also wanted to keep his appearances as evenly spaced as I can. This wasn't quite possible at the start of the series due to the amount of events that need to happen in a particular order, but he'll start to show up more frequently from now on. A few other things to note. This is the first time we actually see the docking procedure for Thunderbirds 3 and 5. Also, this is the third episode in a row that begins with the Sun Probe theme. And lastly, this episode works better a little later in the run as here, due to this comment by Virgil.
From the reports we've been getting, it seems you've been having more adventures than we have.
This comment makes not much sense in the production order, where this is only her second appearance. Although it should be noted that she had already appeared in the pages of TV21 for about a year before the series actually broadcast. The End of the Road, a classic episode. Unconnected to the continuity, but I have to state that of all the guest vehicles in the series, the Explosives Tractor is probably my favourite. Such a cool little design. Not sure what relevance that has to anything, moving on. This is probably the first real rescue with a challenge. I'd argue that the communication problems in Danger Ocean Deep is more an inconvenience. It makes the job more difficult, but there's no chance they won't go out on the rescue or that it would have lasting consequences for them. Here though, Eddie Houseman's stay on the island provides not only good character conflict between Alan and Tintin, but adds an extra level of risk to the rescue itself.
Hey, Father, he knows us.
That's right, Scott. Eddie knows us.
That means we can't help? Is that what you're saying, Dad?
Why are you grinning like that, Alan? This is probably also the best use of Thunderbird 1 as a rescue vehicle in and of itself, as opposed to just enabling Scott to act as a first responder and get the lie of the land. One last thing, the rain is heading up in this shot here, it's been reversed. I can't unnotice it, and now neither can you. I would argue Vault of Death is the episode where Lady Penelope and Parker's relationship is truly established. In the episodes preceding this, or where they only feature in a small capacity, there's no mention of Parker's criminal background or his more lovable rogue characteristics. Penelope also changes subtly here too, there's a bit more humour to her. Both David Graham and Sylvia Anderson's vocal performances also change. Compare Trapped in the Sky.
Wait till we get to a clear stretch of road. We don't want to create a scene.
Very good, milady.
And here.
It isn't right, milady, that I should be the one to ruin an old colleague's life ambition.
Well, we haven't time to argue, nosy, Parker.
This is why I'm a little curious as to whether that gag in Danger Ocean Deep works before here, but continuity, my hands are tied. By myself. The pair's new dynamic arguably works to greatest effect in the atmospheric opening set piece, as the pair break into the Bank of England vault. By this point in the run, you're familiar enough with the characters that the scene may seem shocking up until it's revealed what they're doing. It's difficult to reconcile Penelope's terrible driving here with her proficient use of Fab 1's gadgets later on in Brink of Disaster. The way I choose to understand the scene is Lady Penelope is deliberately driving like a madwoman in order to reprimand Parker for wasting so much time. I am fully aware this is not the intention of the scene, this is a Dennis Spooner script, but it works for me. It's nice to see International Rescue struggle with a rescue, their laser equipment not being suitable for breaking through the vault door. One last note, Jeff mentions that
Things have been kinda quiet on the space front.
which is a statement that works in all orders, as Vault of Death has always been broadcast after Sun Probe, with at least one episode between them. Another Hood appearance. This is his only appearance where his goals in no way involve international rescue, so comes before the severity of some of his later schemes. His destruction of the first Red Arrow is also the only time in the series one of his plans goes off without a hitch. As mentioned in the intro, this episode correctly follows End of the Road.
We're not expecting visitors, are we, Father?
I don't think so, unless it's some more of Tintin's admirers.
Placing Vault of Death between them handily prevents having two Outsider on Tracy Island stories back to back. I also reckon the gag of the silent launch sequence works better a little later on in the series, rather than episode 5 is in the broadcast order. And at this point, we've done it. We've solved all the continuity errors. Everything else I bring up from now on is more just about making sure the season flows nicely. For example, of the 15 remaining episodes to get through, Thunderbird 4 features in 7 of them, and ideally we'd not want to back to back. There are also a couple of episodes which I think work better in a certain order, but it's not wrong if you switch them round. So, let's keep going. This is perhaps one of my favourite episodes of the entire series. Is it any wonder the initial spell out OCD? The visuals of the fire flash on the ocean floor are superb, and this is probably what I think of as the quintessential Thunderbird 4 rescue. This is also probably Gordon's best episode. His ability with a gun comes up once again. One thing I think everyone's asked at some point though, did Gordon have to hold those cables all the way back to London Airport? When I stated earlier on that we'd used up all the episodes without Grandma, I'm willing to bet that this is an episode that crossed a few people's minds. However, I wanted to keep this one back as I feel the subplot actually ties up quite well to a previous episode. In 30 Minutes After Noon, Danger at Ocean Deep and Vault of Death, we see International Rescue use their laser equipment to cut through heavy doors. However, in the latter episode, the door presents too much of a challenge, so an alternate form of rescue is needed. City of Fire starts with the Tracys testing out a new form of gas that's stated to be
3 times faster than a laser beam.
Oh, we can say it properly. I like the idea that the reason a new gas is being developed here is in response to the issues arising in Vault of Death. All that said, I can see how reordering this episode on such an incidental detail might seem a bit much, so if you prefer you could just stick this one back in the episode 3 slot as per the production order. One thing to note about this episode's placement though is it also helps to break up the mole's reappearances. In the production order, 2 happen back to back at the start of the series, with the last happening during the Duchess Assignment. Here though, as in the broadcast order, they're more evenly spaced. Unlike in the broadcast order, but like the production order, this episode sees the introduction of my favourite pod vehicle, the Firefly. It only makes 2 appearances, but I feel this more impressive outing makes for the more memorable introduction. In fact, City of Fire overall makes for a very memorable instalment of the show, albeit one marred by the misogynist tone of the ending.
Just one thing, Tintin. You didn't say if the driver of that car was male or female.
Why do you care, Scott? Speaking of the Firefly... It's a shame to burn through the Firefly's 2 rescues back to back, but Terror in New York City marks a major shake-up in the series that I feel is best served as close to the middle of the series as reasonable. The attack of Thunderbird 2 by the Sentinel is a standout moment of the entire show. Every department working their A-game to make this sequence land, much as Virgil doesn't. It's so memorable it even got repeated in Thunderbirds Are Go. Fun fact, this sequence required the first construction of a physical model of a Thunderbird for the new show. The tension of whether Thunderbird 4 can make it in time is palpable throughout, and the destruction of the Empire State Building stands as one of the biggest disasters the show ever put to screen. Now I'm betting as soon as that title came up, some people watching this thought, but the Empire State Building appears in the Duchess Assignment, so that one's got to come first. It is a known about continuity error. In fact, I was introduced to it by the complete book of Thunderbirds. This isn't my original copy, this has actually got someone else's maths homework indented in the cover instead. In fact, I did construct another episode order before this one, incorporating that requirement into it. I was halfway through checking it when the offending shot came up. This shot, to be exact. And I reckoned if I was going to include it in the video, I had to sort of highlight which building it was, just to make it nice and clear. The only problem is that I couldn't tell which building it was. First things first, I went to Google and searched for images of the building. These towers look close, but the detail at the top is wrong on both of them. Possibly it could be this building here, obscured by the bridge. But looking at photos of the real thing, it seems that the water is nowhere near as close to the tower as it appears in this shot. So I did what any sane person would do. I went into Google Earth and recreated the shot. This bridge in the foreground is the Brooklyn Bridge, at least I believe it is. Never been to New York and unlikely to go, but checking out for bridges around the Empire State Building, this seems to match best. So I found that in Google and attempted to match the angle. This is about as close as I can get, so let's put the bridge behind us to get a clearer view of the skyline. Obviously the shot in the episode is from the 50s or 60s, and Google shows the skyline as it is today. But we can see here that these buildings in the stock shot seem to match these on Google. We can be reasonably confident this is the area in shot. So checking Google Maps to see how far away the Brooklyn Bridge and Empire State Building are from each other, the answer is quite some way. In fact, the Empire State Building is way off to the right of this shot. So I can say now, the Empire State Building is not in this shot, and there is no continuity error. Incidentally, this is also the same bit of New York that's featured in Thunderbird 6. I need to get out more. This is another Grandma Freeze story that I feel benefits from being later in the run. The key complication here is having to rescue Jeff Tracy without revealing their secret identity.
My name is Tracy. I'm aboard the Pacific Atlantic monotrain.
Go ahead. Tracy, this is International Rescue.
Which works better once you've got the structure of the show well established. This is a great episode for Jeff all round. It gets him away from Tracy Island and into the action for once, and contrasts him with the wonderfully unlikable Grafton.
When do we come to the damaged part of the track?
Well, I'm not sure. 15 minutes, maybe 20, maybe more. I just don't know.
Thanks. You're a great help.
This also forms a strong outing for Penelope and Parker. Lady Penelope gets the extended opening sequence in Fab 1, and the attempted robbery of her mansion provides a neat comic foil to the action without undermining it. A runaway train may seem like a cliche idea, but it fits into the disaster movie world of Thunderbirds so well. As a big train fan, because I wasn't nerdy enough already apparently, the shots of the monorail look so cool, flying around the bend, the brakes on fire, resting on the collapsing bridge. Love it, 1 out of 1. Desperate Intruder I've placed here to ramp up the severity of the Hood's appearances. This episode marks his first direct interaction with and attack on International Rescue, resulting in one of the most iconic images of the entire show. One thing to note, which may be a negative for some but is a positive for me, is that with City of Fire, Terror in New York City, Brink of Disaster and Desperate Intruder airing back to back, we have a run of 4 episodes that all put members of International Rescue in direct danger outside of their work for the organisation. These episodes in particular highlight that our heroes aren't invincible, in turn providing some of the most memorable scenes of the series. I'll admit to being cool on the Duchess Assignment. Whilst I love Ray Barrett's Duchess of Royston as much as the next fan,
Oh, Mr. Dandruff, I beg your pardon. I do hope I'm not casting aspersions on your business ability, but the offer you have made seems so disproportionate.
I've always found the plot a little thin. The Duchess loses her money, Lady Penelope knows a guy who knows a guy, she gets kidnapped, Thunderbirds are go. I'm a simple fan, I like it when the big machines do machine things and stuff blows up. Even the dialogue seems a little off this week.
I'll get John to trace the exact course of the Duchess's bleep signal.
I was hoping for something a little more technical than bleep signal. That said, I do appreciate the fact that an episode like this, so out of the normal wheelhouse of the series, can exist. This episode I've placed here to break up a pair of Thunderbird 4 appearances. I'll conclude by saying that Penelope following the Duchess on a screen has the same energy as me following my Uber Eats on my phone to see whether it will arrive in time and move on to the next episode. Another reason for placing the Duchess Assignment where I did is to break up a couple of brain-centric appearances. Of the two, I prefer Desperate Intruder overall, but I like the setup of Brains attempting to direct the rescue covertly from the bridge control tower. The collapse of the bridge is brilliantly executed and provides the setup for a key Thunderbird 4 appearance. This one made an impact on me as a young'un. I spent quite some time attempting to build the Martian space probe in Lego and then burying it with the remaining pieces. It helps that this is a story that's featured in the clip show, the annual, the storybook, that companion VHS, the mini album. Just kidding, I'm not that old. At least I think I'm not that old. Again, this is an episode sort of placed to break up appearances, in this case of Thunderbird 4. And I'm going to be honest, this isn't an episode that I'm particularly mad on. The sequence with Thunderbird 1 being shot down is effective enough, and this moment with Jeff is quite moving.
Oh, excuse me, Alan. I just thought I heard a signal.
The problem for me is when we encounter the Zombites. Fireball XL5 and Stingray both feature a few episodes with this structure, where outside aliens with superior technology lurk in their base planning to destroy or attack the heroes for no discernible reason other than the fact that they're the baddies. But it's one thing when your baddies look like this, or this, or this, or this. It's quite another thing when your baddies look like this. Their whole setup kind of feels off to me as well. For a sci-fi show, Thunderbirds is relatively grounded. It features no magic, except when it does. It features no aliens, except when it does. The whole world of 2065 feels very close to the present day of the 1960s. Its villains tend to be based in the world of espionage, popular at the time, and the big thing that sets it apart from its Super Mario Nation contemporaries is a focus on wonderful and sometimes terrible technology that could conceivably exist in our world. The Zombites run counter to that. They feel like the villains of a comic strip in comparison. This is also the last time we see a changeover of crew on Thunderbird 5, barring one brief shot in the Cham-Cham. This is why the Uninvited is here rather than closer to that run of stories in the middle of the series, John's on Tracy Island during Desperate Intruder. It's odd to me the minute Thunderbird 5 has any relevance to the plot beyond phoning in the first emergency call, such as here or as in Operation Crash Dive, the role of Space Monitor is handed over to Alan. Jerry Anderson really hated that John puppet. He's not even present here when he's returning from Thunderbird 3. Thunderbirds does James Bond.
Dear me, you are impatient, Mr. Bronson.
Very subtle. One of 2 remaining Thunderbird 4 appearances bar the clip show, the man from MI5 can claim the best episode-specific score of the whole show. Oh, that riff is just, chef's kiss, it's perfect. It's so good, even Virgil's picked up a guitar instead of the piano. Wait, that's Duke Dexter's guitar. Is that a signature model? Is Virgil a fan? The conclusion of this story plays out in the normal exciting manner we've come to expect from Thunderbirds, but the dialogue...
Okay, the pleasure cruise is over.
Oh, are you going to tie me up?
You bet I am.
Oh, I don't mind, really.
I'm saying nothing.
Oh, would you mind not tying the knots too tightly, please? I'm very delicate.
If you don't quit gabbing, I'll gag you as well.
I'll just leave you with the question as to why Jeff has 2 versions of the Nutcracker right next to each other on his bookshelf, and we'll move on. The Hood's penultimate appearance is a good outing for him. Not only is he genuinely intimidating in his attack on Williams...
Open the door!
Mostly, he also gets on fans' good sides by trapping Tony and Bob in the collapsing mine. Attaboy, Hood. It was only a matter of time anyway. They're way too committed to putting themselves in danger for their games. And there's cutting gear just left lying around the house. How there's not been an accident sooner, I'll never know. Other than that, this is a fun little episode. It's a good story for Scott, and there's some great model work of the Australian outback. That's the underside markings of Thunderbird 1. You know, the ones that are there in that shot in Trapped in the Sky, and this shot, and then never ever again. Wait, have they always been there? Have I just not seen them? I can feel my world unravelling. I'm going to have to go back and check. One of the most memorable episodes of the show ever made. I do kind of find this one to be a wee bit slow in the front half. It's a necessity of the plot. You need to show how the alligators get to the size they do, but it doesn't feel talky at times.
Well, just let me use the ray gun. Maybe I could cripple the reptile.
Move and you're dead.
Wrong episode, bud. Once it does get going though, boy does it ever. The sequences with the alligators look fantastic, and it's a great role for Scott in this story.
I've arrived at the distress area.
Doesn't quite have the same ring as Danger Zone, does it? There's no logical reason dictating this, but the fact that the following day will be Alan's birthday makes it feel like something that should be happening towards the tail end of the series, which is where we find the episode. Also, for those interested, this episode shows Gordon changing wetsuit. From the grey one, he appears to have nicked from Troy Tempest in the previous 3 appearances, to the black one he seems to have nicked from Carl in The Man from MI5. Okay, so here's a little pet peeve of mine with regard to both the production order and the broadcast order, is that they both show the Imposters before they show Cry Wolf. That's not strictly speaking wrong, no details contradict each other that way, but The Imposters is a story about the world losing faith in international rescue. To me, it makes more sense to show the episode demonstrating how international rescue are idolised before that event. So that's what we've done here. I did initially have the 2 episodes back to back, but I changed my mind after doing a trial watch through. The same puppet is used to play Colonel Jameson in Cry Wolf and General Lambert in The Imposters. This isn't unusual in and of itself. There's only so many puppets to go around. This sort of doubling up happens all the time. For example, Captain Hansen in Trapped in the Sky reappears next week as Colonel Sweeney in Pit of Peril. What makes it particularly stand out here It's the same puppet in the same outfit on the same set playing a very similar role with a very similar voice. Even his subordinate reappears. In order to minimise the weirdness, Attack of the Alligators moves between them. Whilst the episode definitely builds out the world of International Rescue and their agents across the globe, it also provides a weaker outing for Lady Penelope. Dennis Spooner's comedic sequences towards the end of the episode haven't really aged well.
Oh no, Parker, why did I ever come here? Why?
I feel like I'm ragging on Dennis Spooner a bit in this video. I'll clarify, I do like him as a writer. I'm a fan of his work on Doctor Who. He invented my favourite Time Lord baddie on that show. A comedic edge is required with a potentially dry, stiff and technical show, which Thunderbirds could be in the hands of a lesser writer. He can generate great tension as shown in Vault of Death, Day of Disaster and Cry Wolf, and his comedic scenes often work well, as seen in this very episode.
Wowee! This is really living it up!
What's the matter with this fella?
Get out of the way!
That driver clearly spends way too much time on his hobbies, I can't relate. But yeah, Dennis Spooner can do comedy, it's just when that intersects with gender that issues begin to arise. Fortunately, Lady Penelope has a much better outing coming up next.
When you play that dangerous game.
Right, first things first, the Cham-Cham is mad. Absolutely mad. The inciting incident and International Rescue's motive for investigating is spurious at best. It may as well be, "Father, every time the aircraft was attacked it was raining." "Okay son, I'll get Penny to investigate the weather people." The titular Cham-Cham is nonsense at best.
What's that machine he's working at? I don't know. Some kind of electronic computer.
Now sit down.
You can buy Olsen's Avant-Garde Electronica album right now on Bandcamp. Even the construction of individual scenes lacks logic at times.
Parker, press the alarm bell.
Yes, m'lady.
That sounded like the cable car alarm.
Why does Cass Carnaby have the cable alarm in his bedroom? More to the point, why is he in bed? He was only on stage 5 minutes ago. The Cham-Cham's saving grace is the style and skill with which it's executed. The dancing scene in particular is an incredible achievement with the puppet Cass. Wait, isn't that the Duchess of Royston?
Why, Penelope?
The set design and model work is some of the best produced for the series. Penelope and Parker shine as usual, and Tintin makes a fine addition. In fact, the basic structure of the Cham-Cham kind of would make an okay basis for a Lady Penelope spin-off show. Each week, Lady Penelope, Parker, and Tintin, or another character in the same role, would go to a glamorous location, discover nefarious goings-on, play cat and mouse with the enemy, save the day, and look fabulous doing it. International Rescue wouldn't need to feature, they barely do in this one anyway. I've left Martian Invasion as the final Hood story for the season. There's a couple of reasons for this. It's the closest he ever gets to success, the whole second half of the story being dedicated to stopping him in the most direct conflict between International Rescue and the Hood. There's also a very different vibe going on with him. The lighting in the temple, the camera angles used, all this feels a bit more intense than usual. There's also Virgil's line at the end.
You know, Scott, I've been wondering whether that Stutt could be the agent who's been after our plans ever since we went into the rescue business.
Which feels like something you'd normally say towards the end of a season. Side note, do we think it's a coincidence they used the most Lou Grade-like puppet they had for the producer and put him under the Hood's control? The episode demonstrates the lengths International Rescue would go to keep their secrets. The automatic camera detector has been used sparingly throughout the series. As the show develops, the secrecy angle becomes downplayed outside episodes like The Imposters. They're even inviting kids back to their base in Cry Wolf. Scott states,
"And it's not magnetic film, so I can't wipe it with the electronic beam."
Which we saw in Terror in New York City, which obviously places this episode after. This is probably the most effort they've ever put into maintaining their secret identities. Yet another contributing factor to the series finale feel. Well, almost the finale. There's one more episode to go. It's the clip show. What do you want me to say? It comes at the end. It's an Anderson tradition. I don't have much else to impart. Virgil and Gordon's jumpers look pretty comfy. I like that Scott doesn't even pretend he's going to not tell Chip anything once he's in the pilot seat. One thing I do genuinely appreciate is that the ending prevents Thunderbirds from having a dream episode, obviously excluding this bit. Dream episodes are another Anderson tradition. Stingray has 3 of them. In fairness to the episode, it struggles in the same way that all clip shows struggle in the age of streaming and home media. If I want to watch some probe or End of the Road, I've got access to the full episode somewhere else in the box set. At least with Security Hazard, it allows us a glimpse into what the half-hour versions of each story might have been like before they were extended, whilst also allowing the Tracy family to go out on a moment of charm. And with that, we've done the whole season. And ultimately, I am pretty happy with the episode order established here. The only one that feels a wee bit off to me is Danger at Ocean Deep, but continuity kind of ties our hand there. That's just the nature of the game. Ultimately, though, this is a episode order, not the episode order. Maybe you don't like the International Rescue and Danger episodes being bunched up in the middle. Maybe you're fine with seeing a certain craft or character for a few episodes in a row. The joy of an exercise like this is you get to examine a show you love, to reflect on how it grew, how it changed, how it shifted focus, and how much stuff blew up for inadequately explained reasons. The Gerry Anderson shows, with their complicated production and broadcast histories, make excellent subjects for these kind of experiments. It also helps you understand your own passion for a show, what you appreciate about it, and why some bits of it might not work for you.
No, never mind.
Ultimately, this is just a bit of fun. And with a show like Thunderbirds, fun being the guiding principle, that sounds about right. Fun and explosions.